really want to jump into what a brand is and why it matters. There's often some misconceptions about what branding really is. So, as Teresa said, I've been a designer for over 20 years and actually an entrepreneur for around 16 of those years. And what I've learned in that time is that it really takes so much more than just being really good at what you do to start and run a successful business. The reality is you need a brand. But, what is a brand? Well, to the outside world, your brand looks like one thing. And I really hope everybody had breakfast this morning because a few of my slides might make you ready for a snack. So your brand to the outside world looks like this beautifully decorated cake, right? It's a cohesive whole that looks and smells amazing, but it's when you cut into the cake and you see beyond the sprinkles and icing to see that it's actually made up of many layers. And those layers are made up of a collection of perfectly measured ingredients, right? The eggs and the flour and the butter and sugar, all of these things work together in harmony to create a brand that, gives the brand, the cake substance, or not the brand, obviously. It works together to create a cake that doesn't just look and smell great, but a cake that tastes amazing too. So a cake that's made up of sprinkles and icing lacks substance, just like a brand that's all logo and website. And so when I say brand, right, you might think logos, but I'm not just talking about logos. And while a logo is an important part of representing who you are, it's really only one layer of your cake. When I say brand, I mean how you make people feel. It's really the experience that people have with you when they work with you, buy your products, and that image you project when you put yourself out into the world. That's what your brand really is. It's the promise you make to the world. Really, it's what you stand for and what you believe in. And it's why you started this particular business in the first place. So your brand needs to drive everything you do and how you do it, from how you answer the phone to how you represent yourself in person, in marketing, and on social media. And of course, with the quality of the products and services that you offer. And the reality is that your clients are overwhelmed with content and options. And if you aren't standing out, you aren't creating a memorable brand. And many businesses are lost in the noise online because of the common mistakes that I'm going to share with you today. So I want to give you some insights into what those mistakes are and how you can cure them for yourself. So, what branding mistakes are you making? So the first one that I see is, and this is a common problem, it's that you're generic and unremarkable, right? You just kind of blend in with what everybody else is doing, and you're kind of trying to please everybody, but not really making your position and your brand be known. And as I said, your brand is the most powerful tool you have to connect with your audience. So being both memorable and remarkable is essential. So I want to show you a few examples of some brands that, were generic and unremarkable, and the change that you can see when they really have something that connects with them and their brand. So the first one I want to show you is David Dunkley. So David Dunkley is a milliner in Toronto. He is trained by the Queen's Milliners. He's super talented and amazing. And his old logo was pretty generic looking, right? With the double D's. But I also said to him, David, nobody should have double D's in their logo unless they're a bra company. So he kind of got that, right? So on one hand, he's maybe memorable, but for the wrong reasons, right? You don't want to be memorable because you've got double D's in your logo when, you're a milliner. So we also knew that David's craft, he is, one of the best at what he does. And his brand wasn't really reflecting the luxury and the quality, of the brand that he wanted to project. And so, we needed to elevate his brand to not just be memorable and remarkable, but actually fit better with his price point, his training, and, the place that he wanted in the market. And so we added the crown because the crown is the epitome of a headpiece, right? So instead of, if you think about like Hakim Optical, right? Like the eyeglass place, right? Those glasses look like they still have the 1970s glasses frames in their logo. And that's the challenge when you use something that's very specific to sort of a time, is that it's not timeless. And so this way we knew that his style could change, but that this still positions him at the top of his craft. So the next one I want to show you is Dr. Lisa Watson. So as you can see from the logo on the left, it was, again, pretty generic. She's a naturopath. So the one thing I could say is that it wasn't green with leaves, which is sort of what I see very typically in this industry. And so it was really about getting to know her and understand what makes her different. And so if you knew Dr. Lisa Watson, you would know that she's got red hair and red lips and piercings and tattoos. She hula hoops with fire. Like she's kind of a badass. But that brand was pretty generic and bland and unremarkable, and it didn't fit her. It didn't align. Right? So we worked together through my process to develop the language that from burnt out to fired up, and really develop the foundation so we could then create the visual expression. Now I'm showing you all visual, logos, even though I said a brand isn't just your logo, but I wanted to show you what happens when you really understand your brand, what makes you different, who you serve, and like what your position is in the market, so that you can create a really authentic brand. So I'm showing you the really authentic versions of the visual brands that I've helped create for my clients, just so you can see that before and after really helps give you some context. So the next one is Black Spruce Financial. And it was funny when we first started working together, he said, he wanted to keep the logo. And I was like, are you a big Star Trek fan? Like, what's happening here? Because that literally looks like a Star Trek symbol beside his brand. So again, generic, maybe memorable, but for the wrong reasons, right? So you want to create a memorable brand, but not because people are then assuming, like David, maybe that you're a bra company or that you're a big Star Trek fan. Again, this was just a super generic icon that he got at like a print shop on his business cards. And in financial services, that's also the most common font that it's called, the font is actually called Bank. So it's a font you would see with a lot of banks, financial institutions. It's pretty old school. Then I learned the meaning behind the name Black Spruce. And it's because the black spruce tree stands the tallest in the forest. So you can always see it. And he works with independent business owners who really want to stand above the rest, right? So it was really fitting to revamp the logo to really fit better with the messaging and who he works with and the meaning behind the name. Sometimes people have a brand and a name that's really cool and has some depth and meaning to it, but they don't have a visual brand that really expresses that and tells the story. And ultimately, people need to connect with you and the story behind that. And if you have a business name that has some meaning behind it, then it's really important to be able to share that with people. Even for me, so Lab Creative is my business name. And while Lab is a word, it's also my initials. So there's a little story around the fact that LAB is my initials, but it's also a word, and I can use that chemistry language, right? So it's a little story about my brand. And the last one I want to show you is Revisionary. Now, the logo isn't terrible, right? It's not bad, but it really didn't fit the business owner and the work she does. Now, she's super smart, but also very spiritual. And she's a business coach, and needed to have a brand that better reflected those both sides of her business, which is how we created that icon. So the one on the left looks a bit more tech, right? So it actually doesn't even look like it's necessarily a coaching business. It looks more like a tech business. So it's also about looking at what is the perception that your brand is giving people when they see it visually. So you need to stand out and be memorable so that you're the only choice, right? If you have a brand that's generic and unremarkable, it's going to be really hard for people to remember you when the time comes for them to, potentially be hiring somebody or looking for somebody. So if you have a brand that really stands out, they're going to recognize you when they see you on social media, or they go to your website, or when somebody asks, hey, I need a company that does X, you're immediately who they think of, because you're visible, you keep top of mind, but you have a brand that is, memorable and remarkable. So those are really important things to think about. So look at, Look at your industry. Take a look at some of your competitors. Look at what are they doing? What do they look like? What colors? What graphics? What position are they taking in the industry? Is it crystal clear what they offer and who they serve? And really look at what could you be doing better or different from your competitors in order to stand out. So I always say this isn't the time to be wallflowers and blend in. We want you to actually stand out and be different from everybody else, which is probably very different than how we might have felt in high school, right? This is like, we want the complete opposite of that. So the next one is unsuitable for your audience. And so it's important to take the time to get to know your market. And I believe that it goes far beyond demographics. I really like to look at psychographics, and that is what they value, what their challenges are, and how you help them so that you can find that common thread and you can project the right image and target your audience with a really clear and strong message that is more of a heart-to-heart connection. I really believe that, especially now, and we're all in this virtual digital world, that if we're only connecting with people on sort of a cerebral brain-to-brain level, they're just going to be dollars and cents and comparing you to somebody else and be like, well, they're cheaper or they're more conveniently located. We really want to look at, if you can create a heart-to-heart connection with the right audience, then they're going to hire you because you're the only choice for them. And so you might be thinking that, well, if I really define my market, it might reduce opportunities. And maybe that's true, but perhaps it would reduce the wrong opportunities. When you get really clear on your audience and how you connect with them, it will repel people from you that aren't the right fit. But isn't that what we want? Right? We want to attract the people that are right for us. And so the right people will be magnetized to us, and the wrong people will be repelled from us if we have a brand that really fits us and our audience, right? So it's really about finding that alignment between you and who you want to serve. And I want you to think about too, are the clients you have now different from the clients that you want? That's kind of a deep question, right? Sometimes people they start to create a brand around the clients they already have, but they don't actually want those clients. They actually want a bit of a shift. And so you have to change your brand and your language so that you attract more of those people. And so I'll let you know that a number of years ago, I started actually going after bigger businesses because I thought that's, I would greater, larger, more consistent contracts, more money, et cetera, et cetera. And I realized it just didn't feel right. And I knew that that isn't the kind of work and clients that I wanted to help. I want to help entrepreneurs, small businesses, solo entrepreneurs. That's who I love helping, because I want to help them make their mark on the world. And I decided to focus solely on them, even though, most small businesses typically have smaller budgets. But I personally, it's a little bit of a selfish reason, but I get so much more joy out of the small clients and solo entrepreneurs I get to work with, which makes me actually better at what I do because I love the people I get to work with. And that actually helps build my business because I love what I do so much that my clients feel that, and they are very happy to refer business to me because of that. So when we create a brand that's really suitable for us and for our audience, it really helps to create more, really draws more people to you. So let's look at a few examples of this when things are unsuitable for your audience. So this is a client of mine from a number of years ago. And so her old website is on the left. Her name is Susan Stewart. She's an amazing comedian, motivational speaker. And then her new website on the right. Now, when she came to me, she said, people keep calling and wanting to pay me a fraction of what I charge. And I took a look at her website and I said, that's because your website looks like you charge less than you do. And so she didn't realize that her website and her brand was actually telling people that she was cheaper than she really is. It was downplaying the value she brings. And so she was like, well, I'm funny, I'm a comedian. And so she was going on this more funny side, with the fonts and the style and all of that. And I said, well, you can still share your personality, but have a brand that is more attractive to the corporate audience you're speaking to. It doesn't mean you have to look corporate. but you need to have a brand that attracts them and tells them, I am worth a lot more money, than that old website. And when we made that shift, she started getting paid what she deserves. She also got picked up by the two biggest speaking bureaus in Canada. Although her business is greatly affected right now, she is still doing okay because she has built this brand for herself around this new look and feel. And she said, I never would have had these opportunities had we not done the rebrand. So it just goes to show that you don't always realize that your brand is maybe sending the wrong signals to your audience. The next one I want to share now, this is a little bit of a bigger business. It's Randolph College for the Performing Arts here in Toronto. And although they're larger than I would normally work with, I used to be a dancer, and I loved I wanted the opportunity to help them with this brand. So you can see that the website on the left, it's old, it's outdated, it was hard to navigate, and it really didn't fit the audience. Like the young people, because they have a college program, they'd look at this website and be like, man, this is super outdated. And then, the parents, it didn't really say enough. They were sending mixed signals too, because they had two different logos and they had something old and something new. And so they were just confusing people, and it wasn't really suitable. It wasn't really sharing their message and what they wanted to tell people. And so now this new brand is really sharing who they are. It's not confusing, and it's really much more suitable for the audience that they have. And the last one I want to share for this is Awoken Beauty. So Awoken Beauty is, she's an erotic, expert. She helps people with their sex lives and their own personal sort of how they feel about themselves and their bodies. And her old logo, well, we tried to kind of revamp. She was really stuck on this kind of rainbow feel in her name and the frog. And, she was also doing multiple different things. At the time, she was had recipes, and she was doing holistic nutrition, but she also had this baby-led weaning, but then she was also helping people with sexuality things. And it was just very confusing and conflicting. I'm like, you can't be having things related to babies, and feeding them. And then it just was very confusing for her audience, and it didn't really fit any longer. So we needed to really capture that essence of what Awoken Beauty is. And it really is, as her tagline says, it's that erotic self-awakening. And she needed photographs and visuals that really expressed who she was. So the old brand not only really didn't fit her, but again, it wasn't really speaking to the audience that she wants to work with. So if you're not attracting the right clients, you have an alignment problem. And it's really something I see often, where people are building a brand or a business because they're like, this is what's expected in my industry. This is what people think it should look like or sound like. These are the clients that people think I should work with. We often have a really bad case of the shoulds, right? People think we should be doing something a certain way. But who says, right? Just because that's how other people do it doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. So it's really time to do that deep thinking, go inside and go, who do I really want to serve? What is my mission in life with my business? Why did I start this business? What lights me up? What kind of clients, bring me the most joy so that I actually get to really enjoy my business? We didn't start this business to be miserable. Right? So you might as well get to work with the clients that really light you up and will pay you what you deserve, right? That's really important and should not be overlooked. So number 3 is not having formalized systems. Now, this might sound like a funny one to people, but when I first started my business, I didn't have any experience running a business. And honestly, I don't know about any of you, but I don't have an MBA. Most entrepreneurs I know have no business background. They just have a passion for whatever it is that they do, and they wanted to make a business out of it. But somehow, even back when I first started my business, I knew the importance of structure. And, many entrepreneurs, when they start their business, they don't really think about setting up their pricing structure and having standardized contracts and procedures. And so, you're thinking, what does this have to do with my brand? Well, This has everything to do with your brand, because without these systems in place, your brand lacks credibility. So the truth is, how you operate your business has everything to do with your brand. Now, when I first started my business, one of my very first customers, I think they were my second, said they hired me because I was so much more established than the other companies they had considered, right? And I did a really good job with my poker face, and I accepted the compliment without telling them the truth, because I knew that I could fulfill on the promise. And to me, that was the most important thing. So what won them over? Well, they obviously loved my design, aesthetic, but it was also that it was combined with a seemingly, professionally run business that they could trust. I had my portfolio, my pricing structure, and all of these things. And that to me was quite fascinating, because the fact that I had all of these systems in place meant that they chose me over the other company. It doesn't mean that they weren't good at what they did too, but they didn't come across as professional. So that's just something that I find is really important. Now, also having a process. So the process page on our website is actually usually one of the top 4 most viewed pages on our website. And I was fascinated by this. And I started realizing that when I was having discovery calls with people, or they were reaching out, they were like, I love your process. I want to know more about Brand Camp, which is my, step 1 of my process. And so they were actually actively really reading and understanding and wanting to know more about our process and connecting with that. They're like, it's so easy to understand. I know exactly what I'm going to get. And so now it's like, what is your process? And I believe that your process and your client experience are really key in your brand. So it's not just about the thing that you're selling. I want everybody to stop selling whatever it is that you do. Somebody was HR, PR, somebody was in real estate. I can't remember what some of the other businesses were that when you said in the chat. Stop selling the thing that product or service, and sell the experience and their most desired outcome. So when people ask me, oh, do you sell logos and websites? Like, well, yes, but I sell confidence and clarity. Because to me, without confidence and clarity, you could have the best, most beautiful brand in the world, but if you're not going to ever be able to take that step to, share it with the world, you're going to hide, because you don't feel that confidence and clarity around what you're doing. And so having a really clear process, both internally, like what's the journey I want to take my clients on? And then, you look at what do I want them to know about what I do, and remove your jargon, remove all of those things, talk about what they're going to get, the benefits of working with you, as opposed to just the things that you sell. So that's a really key thing I want you to think about. And remember that your brand is every touch point somebody has with your business. Right? The way you answer the phone, as I said in the beginning, that all of those touch points, when they see you on your social media or on your website, you answer an email, all of those touch points matter. And they can't be overlooked, because one wrong step, one bad taste in their mouth from you, and that can ruin your entire reputation with somebody, right? So it's really important right now to make sure that your social media presence is aligned with your website and your brand. So a lot of times I find that people are, they're one kind of persona and person on social media, and then their website's like the super polished, like super professional version. And we need to find a bit more alignment, right? You can have more fun on your website and bring a little bit more of the professionalism into your social media, so that it doesn't feel jarring when people go from one to the next. It should be seamless. Right? If you see me on my social media, or you go to my website, or you're friends with me on Facebook, I'm the same person. My personal page on Facebook, you might just see more pictures of my kids, right? Because that's personal. But ultimately, I'm the same person no matter where you see me, because my brand is aligned with me and the people that I want to work with. So it's not hard, right? Having an aligned brand means that it doesn't feel like you're pushing against a brick wall. It shouldn't be hard. It still requires effort, but when you have a brand that is really deeply aligned with you and your clients, it'll just feel a bit more effortless, because it's going to be natural. It's not going to be hard to figure out what to post on social media, because you're like, This is me, right? My best authentic self. So number 4 is a lack of consistency. And now this is a big one, and one that I see far too often. And the reality is it's actually the easiest for all of you to fix, today, even when we're done this call. So it's, look at your social media, look at your website, find those inconsistencies so that you can actually fix them. It could be as easy as just making sure you have the same headshot on all of your social profiles and it's the same one that's on your website, right? That's kind of the easiest thing. Most people aren't looking at their different platforms. They've just kind of built them all individually in kind of a silo, but never looked at their brand as one kind of cohesive thing to see, would I recognize me if I were to go from my Instagram to my website to my Facebook to my LinkedIn profile, right? We want to create a brand that's like people know immediately. If they question, is that so-and-so? If I had a picture of me with my hair straight, you wouldn't recognize me on my social media because I look very different with straight hair, right? So it's really about finding those inconsistencies. So let's look at Susan. Now, obviously you saw the brand I created for her. That's the one on the right. Now she was speaking at an event and I saw this image pop up on social media and I'm like, they changed the color of her logo to match their branding. And I was like, Susan, nobody can change the color of your logo, right? This is not, we can't do that. Like that color helps with brand recognition, increases it by up to 80%. So by changing the color of your logo to something that isn't on brand really affects the recognition that you can get with that brand. So what I learned from this was a number of years ago, is that if brand guidelines were an essential part of our package, which they now are, but at the time it was an option, right? So you could opt out of receiving brand guidelines. What I learned is that if Susan had brand guidelines, it would have shown what you can't do with this logo, one of which is change the color. So she would have been empowered to go to the company and say, you can't actually change the color of my logo. Here's my brand guidelines. Or what I tell my clients now is, if you're speaking at an event or you're sponsoring something or your logo is going somewhere that somebody else is doing something with it, you send the logo and your brand guidelines so that they know what they can and can't do with your logo and your brand, right? So that it maintains that consistency. So it really is an important element to consider. So, this also goes to your social media. So this is the old social media for Randolph College, and then the new one we created with their new brand. And you can see, it's sort of some pictures, and like they've got all kinds of like different fonts, different colors, different styles. So it's really hard to tell from one post to the next that it's the same company. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have some different looking posts, as you can see we have with the Randolph College now, but they all still fit the brand. And it just gives some different options. So because so many people are spending so much time on social media and people are scrolling, right? You want people to, whether or not they stop, even if your image just scrolls by them, you want to be recognizable even in that scroll. And by constantly changing fonts and colors that are not on brand, you're really affecting that memorability. Now, they say it takes about 6 to 8 times for people to see you, those touch points before they will hire you or buy your product. Now, I'm hearing now it's closer to 20 times because people are so overwhelmed. We see so much content every day. I heard that it's around 100,000 words a day that we see, not to mention the visuals. So if people aren't recognizing you in that split second, you've lost one of those, 20 touch points, even if it's just a quick scroll by. So really having that, I know if you are in Canva and you're having fun with it, I get it, but, don't get wooed by those pretty fonts or those like, ooh, this one's fun, or, oh, this one's seasonal, or, ooh, this or that. I'd rather somebody like, oh, it's kind of boring. I'm like, but you need to be consistent. Doesn't mean you have to be boring, but consistency is really key, especially right now, because people are only seeing you virtually. They're only seeing you through your social media or your website. And when you're inconsistent, you're missing so many opportunities to connect with your audience. And this goes, so this is an example of a client. So we've got their website, super outdated. We're working on that. Their Instagram, no, I think that's their Twitter, and Facebook. And you can see they've got a different profile picture, a different background picture. You kind of maybe get the overall feeling, but you're not really sure 100% if this is the same business when you were to go between those. So that's something I want you to each kind of look at is, am I consistent across the board, right? Now we're looking at, obviously we're seeing these all together, but as soon as you see this, you're like, oh, I know exactly that I'm at the same company, right? So that's something I wanted to share with you. So who here has brand guidelines? So usually when I do this, and I can't necessarily see everybody, but I find that maybe about 5 or 10% of the audience has brand guidelines. So that might be like 2 of you, 2 or 3 at the most. And so it's often kind of that overlooked thing, but creating guidelines in terms of colors and fonts and designs, and even language, right? We now include the brand foundation we work with to create with our clients. So their brand essence, their tagline, their brand position, their why statement, their brand personality, all of that is in this document so that anybody working on their brand knows exactly how to represent them in colors, fonts, and also the tone of their language. Because when you're inconsistent or constantly changing your logo, your fonts, your website, and so on, you really muddle up your message, and your existing and potential clients are left confused. So, establishing brand guidelines is important, and you need to be committed to following them. Inconsistency confuses your potential clients, okay? I want you to really take this to heart. Inconsistency confuses them. And as I said, people are overwhelmed. We're at a place now where we actually need to pare back our content. It doesn't mean have no content, but be consistent in what you're putting out there, but don't overwhelm people. You want to tell them exactly what, connect with them and tell them exactly what you want them to do and have a really consistent look and feel so that you're not confusing them or overwhelming them. So number 5 is inauthentic. Now, I talk about authenticity a lot, and you might be tired of hearing the word, right? It feels like people are throwing that around a lot. You need to be authentic. You need to be authentic. So it's, in some ways, it's almost lost its meaning. But to me, it's really one of the most important things to consider in your branding, because authenticity allows you to be aligned with your business and attract and, magnetize those like-minded individuals, AKA your dream clients, right? When you're inauthentic, when you're trying to be somebody you're not going to attract the right clients. I had a client who, she's a personal trainer. She's kind of like, how would I describe her? She's going to push you, right? She's going to swear at you. She's going to she's pretty fierce. And she's not for everybody, but she was putting a brand out there that was very meek and sweet and oh, I can help you, whatever. I'm like, you're a badass. Your brand does not, these two things are completely misaligned. So for her, it was really about having her tone and language and images match her true personality so that she attracted the right people and she stopped being fake about who she really was, right? So it's time to really take off that veil, that shell that we're kind of hiding behind. And it can be tricky to do. So I wanted to share this slide with you because this was really key for me in my authenticity. So I used to straighten my hair. I know that might sound trite to a lot of people, but I thought people would take me more seriously. I was in my 20s when I started my business, young, female, blonde. I was like, oh, nobody's going to take me seriously. That was my own internal narrative saying people aren't going to take you seriously. And so I did that, but look at how reserved I look, right? I'm not smiling with my teeth. I'm barely cracking a smile, right? I thought I looked really good. I was like, I look very professional, very sleek, whatever. And then, I really embraced my curls around the time that I developed Lap Creative. I still remember I went away to like a leadership weekend retreat and had like some pretty big sort of realizations. And the first 2 days of that 3-day event, I like came to it with my hair straightened. And then the third day I came down with my hair curly, and everyone was like, what? First of all, they're like, you look 10 years younger. I'm like, okay, I'll take that. And they're like, you just look happier. Like you look more like you. And it made me realize that I was really hiding behind something, and it wasn't really me. And so while it sounds funny that embracing my hair, and my curls was a big part of my transition to be creating a more authentic brand, because this is me. This is how I am. This is how I look. This is how I show up. And it's actually more memorable. Like I have more people recognize me from my headshot, from my curls, or walking down the street, or like at an event, because they recognize me. My own kids, I came home one day with a blowout, and my kids were scared. They were, oh my God, Mommy, I didn't realize that was you. Right? So even just how you show up, how you dress, how you wear your hair, men and women, right? Like this isn't just for the ladies. It's important to really embrace who you are and just be like, this is me. I still want you to be your best authentic self, right? Not necessarily your rolled out of bed authentic self. I still believe that we need to have a professional look, because we do want people to feel like, I can trust this person with my business, and I actually want to pay them for what they're going to do, right? So that is an important thing to consider. So photography to me is a really important part of authenticity. So, stock photography, I would love for everybody to just stop using stock photography, right? As much as possible. To me, a really important part of your brand is amazing branded photos of you, of your clients, you interacting with people, so that your potential clients can actually picture themselves working with you, right? So years ago, I used to have pictures of our products, like what we sell on, what people get from working with us on our homepage. And then, and while those weren't stock photos, there was no people, it was just product. Then I started hearing that, clients were hiring us because of how we made them feel and the experience. And so I got a photo shoot. So now there's pictures of just myself and my team kind of interacting with clients and working together in our office, which I do miss. But, it's really important for people to picture themselves working with you and like what it's like. And, pictures speak 1,000 words. So you can say a lot with the images that you share and allow people to connect with you. So this was our client, Catherine, and that is a picture of her in the bottom left. But again, she's a speaker, she does workshops, and she helps, corporate businesses. And this photo was just a little too fun and free and didn't really speak to the kind of integrity of her brand. And then the rest of the photos on her website were all stock images. And again, you could buy these on any website. The number of times I've worked in sort of specific industries and I've found the same stock images used on different websites. That's also a problem you run into. That also, makes you look a little bit more generic and unremarkable when you use stock photography, and people can really see through that. So here, Catherine's new photos that really represent her. She's a former boxer. She's got big hair, right? She's got a big personality. She's not for everybody, but the people that really like her and like that fierce personality, they're going to want to hire her, right? So it's about having that image put out there into the world so that you're like, this is me and this is who I am. And it's not generic. It's very, very memorable. So I've done a lot of work with, I spoke at a conference actually for optometrists and ophthalmologists. And these were the kinds of photos I would see on a lot of their websites, along with like models by pools wearing sunglasses. And, it was very stock. And this was one of those industries where I was going I was doing brand audits and going between different websites and forgetting who was who. They all looked and sound very similar. And I was finding some of the same stock images on their websites, even some of very similar messaging. So this was some of the, the photos on my client's website. And so they got a photo shoot. They had somebody come in and capture them working with kids, working with, some older population and different people that really represented the demographics of the people they wanted to work with. So people could go, oh, my kids need their eyes tested. I could take them in here. But if you have no pictures of you with kids, of kids on your website, but you serve kids, people are going to assume that you don't help them, right? So it's really about capturing the personality and the experience people are going to have working with you. Even if right now they can't come in to see you necessarily in person, it's really important to express sort of who you are to the people that you work with or want to work with. So as I said, you want to be your best authentic self. And, right now there's a lot of, it's a challenging time, right? Like there's a lot of scarcity. There's a lot of the unknown about things with business and life and what's happening. And there's a lot of vulnerability. And while I really believe in being vulnerable and sharing your stories, it's not about sharing them in the moment. When you're a hot mess, it's not the time to go on because they're not your best self. You need your closest confidence, the people who you can cry on their shoulders or scream to or whatever it is you need to do. But I really believe that you need to teach from your scars and not from your wounds. So when you're experiencing something in your business or your personal life that's like a gaping wound, it's not the time to go on and share it on social media because people will be like, ooh, I'm not sure I could take this. I'm not sure. Are they still going to be in business? They don't seem like they're doing okay. So I'm not sure about this, right? And they will judge you. And it's really hard to get that back if you've done that. And I've heard a couple of years ago, I heard two different speakers who really overshared. And I was like, ooh, they have not gotten over this thing. And it really affected my perception, right? And even I was like, ooh, yeah, I don't think I would hire this person. They don't seem like they've got it together. And it's not about faking it, but I believe that you can share the lessons of, what's happening to you in your business now, later when you've learned what you needed to learn and you've come out of it on the other side. Then you can teach, right? Otherwise, you're just kind of airing your dirty laundry. And I believe that you also need to curate your vulnerability. Just because something is happening or happened doesn't mean you have to share it, right? We don't need to know the ins and outs of everything in your life. If it's relevant to your business and it's something that, is meaningful that you can share and help other people who might be experiencing the same thing, then I would say do that. But ultimately, I just want you to think about really putting your best authentic self forward for people to find and to see. So let's just have a little review about these, what you need to do, what those mistakes are, right? So generic and unremarkable, the cure is to be memorable, right? And be you, right? That's obviously tied into that last piece. You need to create that alignment so that the brand you're putting out there into the world is aligned, not just with the people that you're currently working with, but the people that you want to work with, but that it's also aligned with you, right? You started this business because you wanted to maybe not work for somebody else. You wanted to forge your own path. So forge your own path, create the path that you want, not because it's what other people think you should be doing, or even what you think that you should be doing. Do what you want to do. And have those formalized systems. I'll tell you, I'm spending a lot of time right now with just honing and streamlining the experience, the journey, the back end process so that no matter, who comes to us, they have a seamless, amazing experience from start to finish. And it's the same for everybody, right? The last thing you want is somebody having an amazing experience with you, referring somebody, and then their experience is completely different because you don't have those systems in place. And even things like your pricing, knowing your pricing and how you talk about it, you need to practice that, because if people hear any inkling of a fear or uncertainty in your voice when you share what you charge, they're going to know, they're going to feel that. And so it's important to have the confidence in what you charge people and how you describe what it is that you do. It's also learning from those experiences. I had in my contract, I talk about things that, are required. So years ago, I was doing some printing for clients and shipped the stuff off, got the bill for my printer, and then didn't get paid from my client. And it was over $5,000 worth of product. So that became a part of my system and my process and my documentation is that if you want me to print something, we don't order it or ship it until you've paid for it. And here's why. So use all those things that have happened to you in the past, maybe in your business, to create those systems so that you're like, I don't ever want that to happen again. Or I loved how this happened, and then make that repeatable. As I said, this is probably the easiest one for you to go away today and just start, making some consistencies happen between your social platforms, your website, even looking at if you're creating more kind of branded things to post on your social media, create some consistencies with the fonts and colors that you're using so that they're on brand. And then be authentic, right? Like if you could nail all of these things and be really visible, you're going to have a much more powerful brand. And that's really how to create chemistry, right? That visibility, right? You could have all those other things, but if you're not visible and not putting yourself out there into the world to be seen, people won't know that you exist, right? So it's really that consistency, authenticity, and visibility, right? That creates a memorable, aligned brand. And that is what I wish for all of you.